Welcome to the Advertising Forum. This is episode 4 of our privacy series, brought to you by Mozilla. We are so excited for our next guest, Brad Smallwood.
Brad, you've had an incredibly busy year, and congrats on all you've accomplished with Anonym so far. From your early days at Yahoo and Facebook, you've really made a mark on our industry. So now feels like the perfect time for our audience to hear about how Anonym will fit into Mozilla's vision for the years ahead. I'm excited to have you here with us today. Welcome to the Advertising Forum.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
As the founder, I'd really love to hear your perspective on how Mozilla's strong focus on protecting consumer privacy online influences the work that you're doing today.
Yeah, I mean, as we kind of started having initial conversations prior to the acquisition with Mozilla, one of the things that we looked up is obviously Mozilla's mission, and their mission is to make sure that the internet is like this open resource and accessible to all, and it actually kind of puts people at the center of everything. And then it gives people the power to kind of shape their experiences, but really importantly, that privacy is at the core, and it's a safe space. And so, like when it comes to privacy, ultimately it's like an individual's security and the privacy on the internet are kind of fundamental to how the internet needs to operate. So I think when Mozilla kind of thinks about us and privacy for internet advertising, really internet advertising is what makes the internet open and free, and then that doesn't need to come at the expense of privacy. And so, but what we need to do is develop technologies so that by default an individual's privacy is protected, but advertising still works. And so that is kind of the core of kind of how we fit into that in Mozilla's privacy vision.
And how does Mozilla handle that? It's very tricky. It's a very tricky balance of standing up these, user privacy and the importance of that, as well as making room for advertisers and publishers who depend on this data-driven models to succeed. How does Mozilla work with those limitations and with those, initiatives that you're driving?
Yeah, I mean, look, I was at Facebook for many years. I never was at Meta. But look, the industry has kind of set up this false dichotomy that protecting an individual's privacy means that advertising and the open internet is going to fail, and that's just simply not the case. So if you think about going back, I've been involved in the industry since the first internet boom of '99 and building some of the first behavioral targeting systems and all that. And the industry has really grown up over the last 25 years without many guardrails on kind of the gathering and the sharing of data. And so as a result, like all the systems have been developed that assume that data can be gathered and shared freely at an individual level. And so it's kind of missed the fact that it's possible to deliver relevant advertising, really valuable measurement, like a detailed measurement, without requiring that an individual's data is shared. It just didn't grow up with the need to do that. And so it didn't build those technologies. So what, where we've really focused and kind of how we kind of solve that, dichotomy issue is that the development of privacy enhancing technologies like Anonyms, we're not the only ones by any stretch, kind of make it possible to deliver relevant advertising, make sure measurement works, but we don't actually have to sacrifice an individual's privacy as a part of it.
So, Brad, that was such an amazing response. Thank you. Help us understand, for our viewers that are watching and our listeners that are listening, when you decided you've had an amazing career building between Yahoo, Facebook. As you mentioned, you were very early in our industry, and you've been a pioneer in everything advertising and technology. What were the strategic considerations that led you to build Anonym and then Mozilla? Mozilla, when I think of privacy, when the industry thinks about privacy, you think about Mozilla. Was this on your radar? Like when you think about the greater, broader privacy objectives that Mozilla has been building over the past decade plus, walk us through this for a moment or so.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you, I kind of mentioned in the response to the first question of like, look, when we look at Mozilla's mission, it's basically our mission of our technology is to deliver on that mission, make internet advertising work, but not require the sharing of an individual's information between all these entities online. And so you can kind of, if you think about it, it's kind of the perfect fit. We are a mission-driven company for sure. Mozilla is obviously also a mission-driven company, and so like that piece just kind of fits. Where we kind of are very additive to all that is our approach is really, let's show people that this is possible. Let's show people that privacy-enhancing technologies can deliver relevant advertising experiences, monetizable advertising experiences, good measurement, can do all of these things. And if we can do that, then we can start shifting the industry to say, you know what, you don't need to do all this data sharing in order to make this all work. That gets you out of, both, some of the privacy regulation issues, because you're not worrying about, well, what's California's law versus Illinois' law versus Colorado's versus, Japan's law that they're about to push out. You actually can just say, I'm going to focus on my business, and the privacy enhancing technologies are going to make sure that I'm compliant. And but our job kind of as a part of the acquisition is to develop the technology that makes all this possible, and not just on Mozilla properties. Actually, very importantly, we're not really focused on the Mozilla properties. We're focused on making it for all of the kind of walled gardens and the open internet, implementing our technologies there.
So that makes a ton of sense on how you're partnering together with different platforms and how you're making a difference within the greater industry. Can you explain how this helps consumers, how this helps the actual users that are all across the globe on the internet?
Yeah. So, by default, our belief is that information shouldn't be shared. Like if I'm a consumer, I go to a site and they're going to gather information about me about I'm buying something or whatever. That it makes sense to the consumer that I'm gathering that information because I'm delivering you a service as a result of that. What doesn't make sense is that as a result of going to that place, all these other places on the internet just learned that I went to that place. That doesn't make sense to a consumer. But the way the internet works today is I go one place and everybody learns that I went to that place. Not a great privacy experience for a consumer. What we want to do is say, but that actually is what makes advertising work really well, because that data gets shared, and then these machine learning models and the measurement and all the targeting all kind of happen on all of those, whether they be walled gardens and the open internet. What we say is look, we can protect the privacy, but still actually allow the companies to deliver relevant advertising. They just aren't learning that I went to that site or that I bought that product or whatever. They're learning that in general, people like me are more likely to do that. And so they're getting these kind of models that help them figure those things out. And really importantly, if you look at my background, it's really around measurement. Really importantly, advertisers are able to understand how delivering advertising is actually leading to sales in their store, and that's what allows them to kind of invest in these in running advertising. And so from a consumer's perspective, the idea is it should be privacy by default, but you will still have these great free open internet platforms out there. So that's what the consumer ends up getting, is protection by default.
Thank you, Brad. As you know, the series is called the Privacy Series, sponsored by Mozilla. But this is not a sales pitch. The passion that's coming from your voice, the entire series, the first 3 episodes that we've recorded, it's all passionate people that genuinely want to make a difference and that are employing a difference in how consumers and how regulations are taking place across the global industry. What are the biggest obstacles Mozilla is facing when it comes to promoting internet privacy? Like, what strategies are you employing to address these objectives and problems?
Yeah. I'll say the single biggest one is kind of overcoming people's perception that privacy, that there's this trade-off. Whether it be advertisers and publishers saying that, oh my gosh, if I don't get all this information, my whole economic system's going to work or my advertising won't work. It's just simply not true when you employ these technologies. It's kind of overcoming that perception that there's this huge trade-off. So that's one. Now, consumers actually, interestingly, have kind of that same perception. And, I would challenge your listeners to say, how many times when you're in Europe or wherever and you get accept cookies, you always just click accept cookies because your assumption is that if I don't hit accept cookies, I'm going to somehow have a worse experience, which is generally not the case. And so by default, people are generally kind of like, I care about privacy, but I don't want any trade-offs as a result of it. And I just kind of overcoming that perception. So that's kind of one whole piece. I think the other thing is just, I don't think a lot of people understand exactly how much information is shared today. I don't think they understand how, by default, all of this information is just flowing around. I think you talked to Eric, and I'm sure he talked a lot about exactly how CAPI and all those kind of things are working. And it used to happen through cookies, so you could at least see it, but now it happens, kind of in the background. You don't see it as much. So I think kind of just understanding how much information is kind of gathered, that's another piece. And then, it's always hard to roll out new technologies. It took a long time for the cookie to get out. It's hard. People are used to operating a certain way, and it just takes some time to do that. And then finally, and I think this is probably, it would help, is just if there was more regulation that just kind of say, here's what you should do and here's what you shouldn't do. And, we're working with like PAT-CG and the W3C on kind of trying to develop like standards for what is good and what is kind of acceptable behavior. And I think that will help. That's probably a longer burn than the other two that I talked about, but I think a lot of it is just education.
Brad, this has been an awesome conversation. Thank you for being here, and thank you to Mozilla for sponsoring the series. Thank you again, Brad, for your time, and looking forward to chatting with you soon.
Great. Thank you.